Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to the Wix Wiz. In this tutorial, I'm going to be demonstrating one approach for how to require the user to submit a certain piece of information before checking out their cart using Wix stores. And in this example, we're going to be showing how to request a delivery date before allowing the person to check out. So as you can see here, I'm in the Wix cart and I click to check out without providing the delivery date. And it takes me to the checkout page, but you'll see here on top that I'm get this warning, please select a delivery date to proceed. And if I were to fill out all the details here, I wouldn't actually be able to check out my cart. But if I go back to the cart and I then decide to give the delivery date and then proceed to checkout, then we don't see the warning anymore and I can continue with my checkout. And all of this information regarding the delivery date and the order information will all be stored in a Wix collection so that you can access it and see what the delivery date that people chose for their orders are. So if you want to see how to do all that and more, let's get started. Okay, so the first step will be to create a collection that's going to store all of the information about the relationship between our cart, our order, and the specific piece of data that we want to collect in order to require someone to check out. And in our specific case, that's going to be a delivery date, but this can really be any data that you possibly might want to determine that a person needs to provide before checking out. Maybe it's kind of like a minimum age requirement or some other information regarding the checkout. So the first step, as I said, we're going to add in a collection. So I'm going to go here to databases and I'm going to add a regular collection, not an external collection. And I'm going to go ahead and click Get Started. And this is going to be the delivery dates collection because essentially the critical element here that I'm trying to verify and collect is the delivery dates. And I'm going to go ahead and create that collection. And here inside the CMS, I'm going to have a few things. So the first thing that I'm going to have over here is a cart ID. So that's going to be over here for the text. And I'm going to choose the field type and call this cart ID. And basically what we're going to do here is store the ID of the cart with which we're associating the delivery date that the person selected. And we're going to use that later on in order to check which order is related to which delivery date by the association of the cart ID. And I think that'll become a little more clear later on once we actually get to it. The next important thing that we're going to have is the delivery date. So let's go ahead and add in a date field. So I'm going to choose that field type, and this is going to be our delivery date. Let's go ahead and add that in. And the last thing that we're going to have here is an order ID. So I'm going to go over here and say order ID. You can also choose to add in other data points. For example, you can add in the entire order in an object. You can add in the order number, which might help you kind of reference the order. But these are the three basic things that I'm going to add for now. And we don't really need this title field anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and make the cart ID the primary and get rid of this title field. Okay, so now that we have this set up, we can go ahead and add the delivery date picker to our cart page. So right over here, I have the cart page open. And here is where things get like a little complicated. And this might be different in the different editors as well. Here I'm using Wix Classic, but in Editor X it might look different. And in Wix Studio, I know they've done a lot in terms of allowing some flexibility in the design of the different Wix stores pages. So it could be that the cart page is also a little easier to work with in terms of placing a kind of custom element somewhere in the page. When it comes to Wix Classic, you have to be a little careful because this is going to be displaying our cart, and you also don't really know what size the cart is going to be and what size the totals are going to be over here. So typically an element like this, we would add on the upper right. So let me go ahead and take this input field, and this is going to be date and time, and I'll just pick this purple one. And if I put it right over here, that should not clash with anything else on the page. Another option would be to add a section here below and add it in, but I feel like that's a little easier to miss if somebody here is just looking at their cart and they're going to check out. But it's really up to you. And don't forget to also fix this on mobile. You'll have to find a place for it to go there as well. I'm just going to focus on the desktop for the purposes of this tutorial. So let's go to the settings, and I'm going to give this a field, delivery date, and the initial text will be nothing. Okay, so it'll be empty by default. Move it back up a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and code it so that when this delivery date is changed, it will update the collection that I just set up with the cart ID and the delivery date that was chosen. And in order to do that, I'm going to build out a backend API, which will take that information and store it. So here I am in the backend of my Wix code, and you'll see I set up here a file called deliverydates.jsw, and you can ignore these other files here. They're just from other tutorials that I've done. So really you only need this file right over here, so deliverydates.jsw. And then I'm going to go over here and get rid of all the boilerplate text that kind of comes in the file. And I'm going to create a function. And this function is going to take a delivery date and get a cart ID and update our collection. So this is going to be export async function. And let's say save delivery date for current cart. And we're going to need to import current cart from Wix stores backend. And I think it's called current cart. No, I think maybe just cart then. No, not cart. Okay, I need to look at the documentation. So let's go over here, and I have Wix stores open, Wix stores backend. Oh, so I think it's just get current cart. Get current cart. Yeah, sorry. So it's just Wix backends get current cart. And to be honest, you also have the option to use the Wix ecom backend if you want as well. That's, I think, what I was getting confused with. So Wix ecom backend right over here. And here we have cart, and we also have current cart, and you can get current cart. And there's just some nuances in terms of what kind of cart it returns. In our case, both of them will have the cart ID, so I'm just going to go with Wix stores because it tends to be a little more simple to work with, but you can choose whichever one you want. So Wix stores backend, that means we want to get current cart, so I'm going to go back to the editor, and this will just be get, import get current cart from Wix stores backend. And then I can just go like this. So I'll say const current cart equals to await get current cart. And then we're going to want the cart ID. So I'll say const cart ID. And let's take a look again at the documentation. And we can see here get current cart. And if I scroll down, and here we have the unique identifier for the shopping cart, that's just underscore ID. Okay, so pretty standard in terms of Wix. So cart ID will equal to current cart dot underscore ID. What the other thing that we're going to need is we're going to need obviously the delivery date, and that's something that we're going to pass into this function as a parameter. So that's going to be delivery date. And now we're going to take these two things and store them in our collection. So we're going to need to import Wix data, of course. And now I just realized that my head, no, okay, luckily my head is not blocking, but I'll move everything aside anyways. Can even zoom in one more, just for the heart of seeing, which includes me. So import Wix data, and now what we're going to say is const inserted item equals to await wix data dot insert, and we're going to insert into the collection that we created, which is delivery dates. I'm just going to copy the collection ID, and here we're going to have the to insert, which is an object that we're going to create out of the cart ID and the delivery date. So this is going to be to insert, or const to insert equals to, and that's just going to be the cart ID and delivery date. Now let's just verify those are the names of the fields. So here we have, delivery date and cart ID. Perfect. And I'm just going to add here suppress off, just in case we add some kind of permissions to the collection afterwards and make it only admin accessible. I don't want to run into any issues. So inserted item, awesome. And then what we can do here is, let's say, just return inserted item. And that way we can check on the front end that everything worked correctly. And I'm going to throw in here as well a try catch, just so that we can catch any errors if we have them. So I'm going to put that right over there. And console.log error saving delivery date, and we'll have the error. And this is going to be something that we'll be able to see in the back end of the website. Awesome. Feeling pretty good about that. So now we can deal with our front end. So I'm going to go back to the cart page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the function we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and import. And yeah, good luck to me if I remember the name of the function. So let me copy it right over here. And that's going to be from backend / delivery dates. Awesome. And then all we have to do here is set up this on change for the date picker. Okay, so let's give this date picker a name. So this is going to be delivery date picker. And then we're going to create another function here. So async function. And let's do this delivery date picker change handler. Okay, a function that handles the changing of that date picker, that input. And then what I'm going to do here is just save say const. Here we're going to have an event, and I can say const delivery date equals to event dot target dot value, and then we're just going to say const delivery date item equals to await save delivery date for current cart, pass in the delivery date, and let's console.log delivery date item. And one thing we can't forget is to attach this to the event listener for the delivery date picker. So dot on change, and then we're going to call the handler delivery date picker change handler. I gave it a slightly long name. Okay, so this is looking good. I'm feeling good about this. So we're ready to run our first test. I'm going to go ahead and hit publish. And let's view the site. And first step, we're going to need to add something to our cart. Well, technically we don't need to add anything to the cart, but let's do that just so that we have some items. And we'll be able to visually see kind of where our date picker is lying in the cart and make sure that it's not blocking anything critical. Go ahead and view cart. Awesome. So here's the date picker. As I can see, it might be a little bit ugly, but it's not blocking anything. We might have been able to get away with putting it like maybe right over here, but again, it's a bit dangerous because you don't really know how long this will be. So let's just check and make sure that the code that we wrote is working. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to inspect here, open up the console, and just change the date. And boom. Okay, so we stored here the cart ID, and we stored the date from the date picker, and let's just double check that inside the collection itself. So I'm going to go here and open up the collection. And you can see here that we have our ID, card ID, and the date that I selected. So that part is working. And now we can go and set up the Wix ecom validations for the cart to verify that there is a delivery date for the specific cart in order to let people to proceed with their checkout. Okay, so in order to set up the validations SPI, you're going to want to go to the public and backend part of the code panel. And you'll see all the way on the bottom, there's this part called custom extensions. And this is where we add in the SPIs. And I actually have another tutorial about this specific SPI in a more general sense. So I might run through a few things here, and we'll definitely be working with the documentation, which you'll probably have to do to implement this. So in order to add the extension, all you have to do is click plus over here, and then you can add in over here the e-commerce validation SPI. And we're going to go ahead and start now. I understand the terms and conditions, and I'm going to call this delivery dates. And I'm going to add and edit the code. And the first thing I'm going to want to do once this gets added in is to set up this config file, because this config file determines if we're going to implement this validation at the cart stage or at the checkout stage. So if nothing is implemented here, then it will just be at the checkout stage. But if we add in the value of cart, then it will be implemented in the cart stage as well. And we can see that here in the documentation. Validate in cart. Okay, so by default it's false, and we're going to want this to be true. So that's what we're going to set up here inside of the get config. So we're just going to return an object, and the validate in cart property is going to be set to true. Okay, so that's all we're doing here in the config file, but it's pretty important. And now we can go ahead and open up this delivery dates.js file here. And this is where we're going to be writing the logic for our validation. So basically the way that this validation works in a nutshell is that Wix will run this function, get validation violations, when certain actions are taken with regard to the checkout process in the cart and in the checkout itself. And it automatically gets these two parameters of options and context. And part of these options is information about the cart that you're checking out with. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to get the cart ID that is passed into the get validations violations. And then we are going to query the collection where we set up the delivery dates and see if there's a delivery date that corresponds to that cart ID. If there is, then we can allow the person to check out. And if there isn't, then we're going to have to require them to select the delivery date. So let's go through this one by one. So the first thing we're going to want to do is extract the cart ID from the options. So let's go ahead and take a look at the documentation here and see what's included in these options. I'll zoom in one more. And here we can see options, and we see here source info and validation info. And part of the validation info, let's see, apply discounts. Uh-oh. I hope I have, let's see, source info, source, cart, persistent ID that correlates between various e-commerce elements, cart, checkout, and order. Okay, so I hit a stump because I was expecting to have access to the cart ID here. Let's see if I have it in the line items maybe. Products, price, item price, subscription. Okay, so we might need to backtrack and change our logic a little bit. Because basically what we might need to do is use this purchase flow ID. Purchase flow ID. Let's see how we can get access to the purchase flow ID. So this might require us to use the Wix ecom. So I'm going up here to Wix ecom. Wix ecom backend, current cart, get current cart. Let's see if that gives us access to the purchase flow ID. Ecom ID. Okay, so I think that's what we're going to need to use. So this shouldn't be a big deal. It just means we need to do a little updating for our backend function. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go back to the editor. So we're taking a brief pause from the validation violations. I apologize, but sometimes life happens. And we're going to go here to the database. I'm going to go to delivery dates, and I'm going to add in another field for the ecom ID. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in a field here, text, and we're going to add in ecom ID. And go ahead and save that. And we're going to go to our backend file where we have the delivery dates, and we're going to get the ecom ID. So const ecom ID equals 2, and that's going to be current cart. But we're going to need to, instead of getting our current cart from Wix Store's backend, we're going to have to get current cart from Wix ecom backend. And this is going to be current cart dot get current cart. Oh, because I have the current cart here as well. So this will just be, let's say, cart, and this will be get current cart, and the cart ID will just be cart.id. Let's just make sure that that's what it's called here. So cart underscore ID. Okay, the same. And then we're just going to need the cart ecom ID. Okay, so this is going to be cart.ecom ID. And why is it not? Property ecom ID does not exist on type cart. I beg to differ. Let's see, ecom ID. It definitely says here ecom ID. So this might be one of those situations where I decide to bet against against the Wix warning here, because I do think that that ecom ID exists for the cart because it says so in the documentation, and we can test it out as well. So I'm going to just say ecom ID, and awesome. And one more thing that I realized that we're going to want to do here is that when we run this save delivery date for current cart, what we'll want to do is, in the case that we do find this cart inside of the collection already, we're going to want to update it instead of inserting a new item. So that's something that I just thought of. So that means that before we do the to insert, what we're going to do is we're going to run a query. So let's say const delivery date item equals to await wixdata.query. Sorry, this is actually going to be the delivery dates query result. And we're going to be querying this delivery dates collection. And then we're going to say that dot equals cart ID equals to cart ID. And then if we find something with that, so here we'll suppress off as well. If we find something that matches that query, so we're going to say, here we'll say, okay, I'm going to say up here, let delivery date item, and then we'll say if delivery dates query result dot items dot length is bigger than 0, then delivery date item will be equal to the result of the query, essentially, which should only return one item at most. So that's going to be equal to that. And then we can say that delivery date item dot delivery date equals to delivery date. So basically getting that item and just updating the delivery date value. And else we can say that delivery date item, is equal to this, essentially. And then instead of running an insert, what we're going to do is we're going to run an update, or we'll run a save, sorry. We'll run a save, and here we'll have the delivery date item. Okay, so just let me go over this and explain what I changed. So first we added in the ecom ID, which we still have to check that works. But what I also did is I added in the option to update an existing item in addition to just adding new ones. And that's because we don't want to be adding in, I feel like my English there wasn't so great, but basically we don't want to add in additional items to the collection every time the person changes the date picker for the same cart. Okay, we just want to update the delivery date because they're essentially changing from one delivery date to another. But in our previous setup, we would have been inserting new items each time that we made a change. And I imagine that would have come up in some QA if I had done more than one date picker change there initially. So let's first check that this is working with the new ecom ID. So I'm going to go ahead and hit publish. And I'm going to refresh this cart page over here. And I'm going to try and change the delivery date. And let's see what we got back here. So I got the cart ID. Let's see, do I have, no, my logs aren't open. Let me go into the logs here in the backend. And I'm going to add in, let's add in a console log here for ecom ID. So console.log ecom ID. We'll publish that. And let's just make sure this is refreshed. So another thing that I just thought of that we'd probably want to do at some point is that we would want to retrieve the delivery date from the collection when somebody comes to the cart page if it already exists. Because let's say somebody comes to the cart page, they pick a delivery date, they decide to leave the cart like I did, or they refresh the page. We want to be able to display the delivery date that they had previously chosen, just to provide a slightly better user experience. But that's not a critical element of this at the moment, so I'm going to leave it to the end if we have time. So let me go ahead and select the delivery date. And yeah, so I'm not seeing an ecom ID, which is worrying. But here it does have the ecom ID. So we did manage to get the ecom ID, but it didn't save in the collection for some reason. Ah, I think I know why this is happening. And it has to do with the second update that I made. So basically, what's happening is that it's going through this case where it's retrieving the delivery date and just making an update. But since there was no ecom ID in this first time that I made the delivery date item, then it doesn't update it if if we're running it through the query. Wow, I don't think that was intelligible at all. So basically, let me just go here and show you how to fix it. Basically, we just need to kill this item here and then try this again. So I'm going to clear the console. Clear console. I'm going to change this. And there we go. Now we have the ecom ID here. Okay, so now everything is working smoothly. And we can go back to the validations violations part. Sorry for the short detour. And now what we're going to do inside of the file over here, sorry, not this file, but the other one, this file. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be querying for the ecom ID and then checking if it matches or not. So here we are in the get validations violations, and inside of the options here we have the, where is it? Where did you go? Come back. Okay, so we have the source info, and then we have the purchase flow ID. So what I'm going to do here in the editor is I'm going to say const ecom ID equals to options dot source info. I'm just going to copy it so that I don't, and then source info purchase flow ID. I'm going to copy that over as well. Awesome. And now we're going to run our query. So I'll say const delivery dates query result equals to await. And here we're going to need to import Wix data. Import Wix data. And we're going to run the query Wix data dot query. And we're going to be querying the delivery dates collection. And we're going to be looking for where the ecom ID is equal to this ecom ID that we just got through the options parameter. And then we're going to run find, also with suppress auth here. And these functions have all of the same properties that you would have in a typical backend function in the in Wix. So you can use suppress auth and anything that would only be restricted to the backend typically. And now what we can do is say that okay, so now we're going to say if delivery dates result dot items dot length is equal to 0, then we're going to throw our validation violation. So let's set up our validation violation. Love the alliteration here. So this is all the stuff that we need to have inside of the violation. So let's, do they have it here somewhere? Okay, let's just set it up ourselves. So we're going to need the severity. And this will basically tell us if the person is prevented from checking out or not. So if we set it to warning, then it'll just say, oh, you forgot something. But if it says error, then it'll be like, okay, you can't move forward. Sorry, like, no way. So let's go over here, and we're going to set it up as an error. So I'm going to say here const violation, and then we're going to have severity, and it's going to be error. And here we're going to have the target, so where we're going to display this inside of the either cart page or checkout page. And we can either associate it in like generally with the cart or with a specific line item. Since this delivery date doesn't have to do with a specific item, then it's just going to be this other property. And then we're going to have name. So let's go over here. We're going to have target. And it's going to be other. And then we're going to have the name. And the name is going to be what they tell us here, which is other default. A little convoluted, but I'm guessing they're planning on having other options here in the future. Otherwise, I don't see any reason to set it up like that. And just make this look a little pretty. Awesome. And I think this is the last thing that we need, which is the description. Okay, and this is basically what's going to show in the error. So basically we're going to say, uh, yeah, can include rich text. Okay, we don't need that. We're just going to say, please pick a delivery date to proceed. So let's add that in over here. So this is going to be description. Please select a delivery date to proceed. Awesome. And then this violation needs to be added to an array of violations because you can have more than one violation. So I'm going to do over here is just to declare that right up here. So it's going to be let violations, and it's going to be equal to an empty array. And then here at the end, we're going to return, so here, if delivery dates query result.imsLength is equal to 0, then we're going to create this violation and we're going to add it to the array. So it'll be violations dot push violation, and then we're going to return violations. And let me just double check the documentation that that's how it's supposed to work. Okay, almost made that mistake. So we have to return violations as an object here. So it's essentially an object with violations as the key, and as the value will be the violations array. So here we're going to do this in object. So happy that I checked the documentation. Awesome. So now once you've created your violations file here, you can go ahead and publish your site. And now we can essentially check and see if it's working or not. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this delivery date item that I have in the cart, just so that it simulates a situation where I haven't picked a delivery date yet first. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to refresh the cart page. And you can see now that it says, please select a delivery date to proceed, and the checkout button isn't working. Okay? And if I go here and I select a delivery date, then nothing happens. And that is because that the validations violations only essentially work at certain points. So like when we make a specific change to the cart. So for example, if I was to go here and to add another item, then it would run, and then then this should go away. Why didn't it go away now? Now we get to debug. So let's go ahead to our... So one thing that I have a hunch about would be this. Okay, this ecom ID. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say console.log. Well, first I want to log the options and see what it says. So console.log options. Options. And I'm also curious if we got this ecom ID. So let's just do console.log ecom ID. And here we'll also do the query result. Why not? Console.log query result. And here we'll have the delivery dates query result. Awesome. So let's go ahead and publish that. And make sure we have our logs open. We do. And I'm going to clear this. And I'm going to refresh this page. Okay, so we're still seeing this error over here. And let's take a look at the logs. Okay, so we do have the ecom ID. Let's take a look at the options. Options, source info, cart. Oh, interesting. So there's actually there's actually a hidden ecom ID that is not in the documentation. Let me just double check that I'm not dissing Wix for no reason. Let's go here, options, source, purchase flow ID, source, no ecom ID. And if we go here to my backend, then we can see here that inside of source, there's an ecom ID. Ding-a-ling-a-ling. We need to add this to the documentation. But basically, that would explain why it's not working, because essentially I was using this purchase flow ID, which I'm not so sure what it is, where essentially this ecom ID is probably what's going to match the one that we have in the collection. So let me try switching this to just say ecom ID and publish that. And go ahead and refresh this page. Still no. Okay, let me go ahead and see what's going on here. Oh, now ecom ID is null. Huh? Why is that? Why is that? Ecom ID. Oh, sorry. Source info.ecom ID. I think that's where I made a mistake here. Yeah, options dot. I took away too much. Source info.ecom ID. And fifth time's the charm, as they say. Okay, so the validation violation went away. Okay, so essentially the logic inside of our validations violations function is working. We just have one small issue, and that is that when we change the delivery date here, it doesn't prompt the validation violations function to run again. Only some kind of change within our cart can make that happen. And I don't currently know of a way to manually run that function. So only Wix can decide when to run that function. And so I kind of knew we were going to run into this issue. And I thought of two potential solutions. And I'm going to go with the second one, but I'm going to tell you the first one just in case you still want to run the check here inside of the cart, which is a hint towards what the second one is going to be. But basically, one thing we can do is to try and make a change to the cart that's not so significant that will prompt the validation violation to run again, possibly. So for example, here, if we go to ecom backend and we get, let's say, current cart, then we can update current cart, and we can basically change something in here. So we can try changing, I don't know, something in the buyer info or something in the buyer note, something in the contact info maybe. I mean, we'd have to find something that's like relatively esoteric that wouldn't really affect the functioning of the cart, possibly change it and then change it right back in order to trigger the validations violations functions. That's one thing, that's an avenue to explore. It's not the option that I'm going to demonstrate here, but I think that that would probably work. The other option is to only run the validation in the checkout stage, so not in the cart stage. And then essentially when we make the transition from the cart to the checkout, then the validations violation will run. And that's pretty smooth. The only issue is that it's a little uncomfortable for the user because they'll have to return to the cart page in order to select the delivery date. So let me demonstrate what that will look like. And it just requires us to essentially remove that little thing that I added to the config in the beginning. So here, instead of doing validating cart true, I'm just going to return an empty object. And I'm also going to get rid of all the console logs that I added here that we don't need anymore. So get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of that. And I'm going to also delete this item here. Let's delete this and publish the site. Awesome. So let me reload my cart here. So you see here now I don't have a delivery date, and I can still go to checkout. Okay, so I don't even see the warning here. And if I go and I click checkout, then here, okay, so here we see please select a delivery date to proceed. And I think that it should prevent me from checking out. Let me just fill this out. Okay, so basically I put in all the details, like all of the delivery details, and now you can see here that it's giving me an error. Okay, so please select a delivery date to proceed, and it's not letting me place the order. Okay, so it does work in terms of preventing the person from placing the order, but it is kind of a little, it's not such great UX because now essentially what I have to do is I have to go back and edit the cart, and then I have to select the delivery date, and then I have to go to checkout, and now the error is gone. Okay, so I still think that this is the better option out of the two that I mentioned in terms of like trying to trigger the validations violation manually. I wish Wix would give the option to do that somehow, and maybe there is and I just couldn't find it. But if I had to choose one of the two options, I'd probably go with the second one that I demonstrated, and maybe just make the message a little more clear that they have to return to the cart. Maybe make it a little more clear that they have to pick a delivery date, something along those lines. But it does work in terms of really preventing the person from actually making the checkout, which is what we want to try and do. And now the last thing that we're going to do is we are going to set up a hook where after the person places the order, we can store that order along with the delivery date in the collection so that as the site owner and the person that needs to actually process the order, we have a place where all of those relationships are stored and I can easily see what all the delivery dates are for all of my orders. Okay, so in order to set up the hook for when a new order comes in, we're going to be using this on new order event inside of Wix. So that's Wix stores backend events on new order. And here I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this example code and head back to the site and go to events.js. If you don't already have this events.js file set up, you can also click here, the plus sign, and then click handle backend events, and that will create that events.js file for you. And here, so I already have the Wix stores on new order set up for a different tutorial, which was the Slack tutorial from Thursday, which nobody is watching, so go and watch it. No, I don't know. I guess people don't use Slack as much as I thought. But let me go ahead and I'm going to paste just the example code here. Let me comment out all of this. Move it down, just in case I decide I want to use it later. And here we have it. So here we have the Wix stores on new order. And this will get the order ID, which is good because we want that. And everything else we don't really need at the moment. What I do need in addition to the order ID is the cart ID. So let's see, event, order ID, number. So I don't see the cart ID here. But that I do know is definitely a property that is stored along with our events, along with orders. So if we go here to the documentation orders collection field, and I just search here for cart ID, so you can see that cart ID is a property in the order. So that might mean that we just need to run a query in order to get the order. So that's going to be this. Let me just copy this over. And I'm going to say const order orders query result equals to await wixdata.query. This needs to be turned into an async function. And we'll get rid of all this. And we'll run find. Awesome. And do I need suppress auth for that? Read admin. I'm going to put it in. Usually it doesn't hurt. if we're in the backend. Okay, and then once we have this, we'll say const order equals to orders query result dot item 0. There should really be only oh, I didn't add the actual query part. So here we're going to say equals, and the ID will be the new order ID. And then here we're going to have the order, and then we'll say const cart ID equals to order dot cart ID. Now we can run another query. So we're going to say const delivery dates query result. Say that equals to await wix data dot query, and copy the collection name dot equals cart ID should be equal to cart ID, and dot find, and we'll run suppress auth here as well. Then we can say that const delivery date item equals to delivery dates query result dot items 0. And I'm assuming that we'll only get one corresponding item here back for a specific cart, because once you check out with a cart, it should delete that cart, if I'm not mistaken. So now that we have the delivery date item, we're going to run an update. So we'll say delivery date item dot order ID equals to new order ID. And what I'm going to do as an afterthought here, since we're already making so many changes, I feel comfortable doing this. I'm going to add in another field here for the number order. Order number. So I'm going to say here order number, just because that is what you really see in the Wix dashboard. So it'll make it much easier for us to visually compare this and the actual order that came in. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I'm going to say delivery date item dot order number equals to let's see, I think it should just be number, order dot number, order dot number dot toString, because I think that that is an actual number. Okay, and now we just need to update. So const updated delivery date item equals to await wix data dot update, and we're going to pass in the name of the collection, delivery dates, and the delivery date item. Awesome, and we'll add just a log here. Let me make this, we'll add a log here, console.log, updated delivery date item, and log it. Okay, so this will run, let's see, can I run this in the backend? Let's see what happens. Oh, event. Okay, I'm gonna have to place an order in order to test this. So I'm gonna go ahead and publish. And I'm gonna go to our checkout here. Okay, so here I am back on the checkout page, and I've given myself like a free coupon, so this order should be totally free. And I'm just going to continue until the checkout, and I'm going to place the order, and we're going to see if our hook runs. So let's just make sure that I'm here in the logs, and I'm going to go ahead and place the order. Okay, so my order is confirmed, and we have an updated delivery date item. Okay, and it has the order ID and the order number. I can show it to you in the collection as well. So here we have this item, and here you can see, so order number, and here is the delivery date. So the order number 10019, the delivery date that the person selected is November 23rd, and that corresponds to this order in the dashboard. So if we go here to the dashboard and we go to orders, then we can see here order 10019. Okay, so that is essentially how to set up that last part with the order confirmation. And yeah, I think we're going to wrap up the tutorial here. So just to recap, what we did is we set up a system which allows us to require the user to select something on the cart page before checking out. And it could be a delivery date, and it could be anything else that you choose. And we sync between the cart, the ecom ID, the piece of information that they provided, and the order when it comes in at the end, so that you can easily see it all in one collection and use that in order to fulfill your orders or do whatever you need. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. There might be better ways to do this. I don't know. I'm always learning and exploring new things. So if you think of any ideas that can improve this process, do definitely let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more videos like this one every week, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.